In the middle of a crowded city lived a woman named Samina. She wasn't rich. Her house was a small rented room with cracked walls. She didn't own jewelry, property, or any luxuries people admired. Her wealth wasn't visible to the world. It lived inside her heart. Samina worked as a schoolteacher in a small community school. Her salary was barely enough to keep food on the table for herself and her 2 children. Every month she struggled with bills. Every week she stretched ingredients to cook. And every day she made choices between her own comfort and her children's needs. Yet if you asked her students or neighbors about her, they would always say, "Samina may not have gold, but her heart shines brighter than any treasure." The habit of giving. Samina had a habit that puzzled many. Every morning, while preparing meals for her children, she always made an extra portion. Sometimes it was just a piece of bread, sometimes a bowl of lentils. Her neighbor once asked, "Samina, you hardly have enough. Why do you always cook more than you need?" She smiled gently and said, "Because every day someone will knock on my door. Maybe a beggar, maybe a hungry child, maybe an old man too weak to earn his meal. If I cannot give from wealth, at least I can give from love." And indeed, her door became a place of hope. Strangers knew that even if the world turned them away, Samina would not. Her own struggles, but behind her smile was sacrifice. Her husband had passed away years earlier, leaving her alone with responsibilities heavier than her fragile shoulders. She often went to bed hungry so her children could eat. There were nights she stitched torn clothes for them, instead of buying new ones. There were winters when she gave her shawl to her children, and shivered quietly. Yet she never complained. Instead, she taught her children a truth. She lived every day. Wealth is not measured by what you keep, but by what you give. A heart that gives will never be poor. Her children, Ayan and Mariam, grew up watching their mother's sacrifices. At school, they shared pencils, books, and even their lunches with classmates who had none. They had inherited not money, but the richness of a giving spirit. The winter of sacrifice one year, heavy rains swept through the city. Many families living in makeshift shelters lost their homes. One evening, Samina returned from work and saw 2 children sitting on her doorstep. Their clothes were wet, their lips blue from cold, their eyes filled with hunger. Without hesitation, Samina brought them inside. She gave them food, dried their clothes, and wrapped them in the only 2 warm blankets her family had. That night, Samina and her children slept without blankets, their teeth chattering in the cold. Her daughter whispered, "Mama, aren't you freezing?" Samina pulled her close and said softly, "Yes, my child, I am. But those children were colder. And when you warm someone else, Allah fills your heart with a warmth no blanket can give." That night, Samina's house was cold in body, but rich in spirit. The ripple effect, acts like these never stay hidden. Word of Samina's generosity began to spread. Neighbors who once ignored her began admiring her strength. Some were inspired to follow her example, sharing meals, donating clothes, or helping others in need. Her giving spirit became like a candle, lighting flames in other hearts. One day, a wealthy businessman visited the small school where she taught. He noticed her dedication, teaching children with broken chairs, under a flickering bulb, her smile never fading. He heard stories of her kindness, how she fed the hungry, and clothed the poor despite having little herself. Curious, he asked her, "Samina, you have so little. How do you keep giving?" With tears in her eyes, she replied, "Because the richest people are not those with the most money. The richest are those who give. What I give may look small to you, but to a hungry child, it is everything, and to me, that makes me wealthier than kings." The businessman was moved deeply. He decided to sponsor her children's education, and donated resources to her school. The legacy of giving years passed. Ayan became a doctor. Mariam became a teacher. Both living their mother's lessons. Ayan often treated poor patients for free, saying, "My mother gave away food when she was hungry. How can I take money from those who have nothing?" Mariam, like her mother, shared her earnings with her students, often buying them books and uniforms. Whenever people praised them, they replied, "We are just following the footsteps of our mother." She taught us that true wealth is not in possessions, but in generosity. Samina grew older, her hair turning silver, her hands wrinkled from years of sewing and service. Yet she never stopped giving. Even in her final days, she would sit outside her home with a jug of water, offering cups to strangers passing by in the heat. The eternal truth: when Samina passed away, the funeral was unlike any other. Hundreds of people came, not because she was rich or famous, but because she had touched their lives with kindness. The poor, the hungry, the orphans, her students, all stood together, weeping for the woman who had nothing yet gave everything. Her legacy was not written in gold, but engraved in countless hearts. Her life whispered a message the world will never forget. Money fades, possessions break, but the richness of giving lasts forever. A poor person who gives is richer than a wealthy person who hoards. The richest people are those who give, because they leave behind treasures of love that no thief can steal, and no time can erase. Key lessons for listeners: richness is not in wealth but in generosity. The hand that gives never remains empty. A mother's sacrifice teaches lessons greater than any school. Love multiplies when shared. Blessings multiply when given. In a city where the skyline glittered with towers of glass and steel, where wealth dictated respect, and possessions decided worth, lived a woman named Zara. By society's standards, Zara was not rich. She lived in a small, rented house at the edge of the city. Her furniture was simple, her clothes were plain, and her salary was modest. She worked as a nurse in the government hospital, caring for patients from all walks of life: laborers, widows, orphans, and sometimes, the forgotten souls no one came to visit. Yet anyone who truly knew Zara would say, she was one of the wealthiest people alive. Not because of what she owned, but because of what she carried inside: a heart overflowing with compassion. Her quiet sacrifices. Zara was a widow. Her husband, Rashid, had passed away in a car accident, leaving her alone to raise 2 children. Amna, her bright daughter, and Bilal, her playful but sensitive son. Life without him was heavy, and every day felt like climbing a mountain barefoot. Her nursing job gave her just enough to pay rent, send her children to school, and buy groceries. Yet many nights, she would quietly skip her own meals so her children never went to bed hungry. She often patched their clothes instead of buying new ones. When Amna once asked, "Mama, why don't you buy something nice for yourself?" Zara only smiled and said, "Because my joy lives in seeing you smile." She wasn't only a mother at home. She was a mother to the world. If a patient in the hospital couldn't afford medicine, she slipped some money into their hand. If a neighbor needed food, she quietly left groceries at their doorstep. She often said, "Money can buy food, but it cannot buy compassion. Medicine can heal the body, but only love heals the soul. That is the gift I want to give." The storm arrives, but life always tests those who give the most. One winter, Bilal fell gravely ill. At first it was only a fever. Zara gave him warm soups and medicine, but within days, his condition worsened. Constant weakness, breathlessness, and fainting. Terrified, Zara rushed him to the hospital where she worked. After a series of tests, the doctor called her aside with a grave face. "Zara," he said gently, "Bilal has a rare condition. He needs urgent treatment, but it is very expensive. Without it, his life will be in danger." Her world collapsed. She knew the amount was far beyond her reach. Her salary barely covered survival, let alone such treatment. She sold her jewelry, pawned her few possessions, and even borrowed small amounts from relatives, but it still wasn't enough. That night, she sat by Bilal's hospital bed, holding his small, weak hand. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "You will not leave me too, my son. I will find a way." The sacrifice back home. Zara opened a small wooden box under her bed. Inside lay her husband's old wristwatch, the only belonging of his she had kept. It wasn't valuable in money, but it carried years of memories. Their wedding day, his laughter, the life they built together. Holding it to her chest, she whispered, "Rashid, forgive me. This is all I have left of you. But our son needs life more than I need memories." The next morning, with trembling hands, she sold it. The money wasn't enough to cover everything, but it brought her closer. Still, a portion remained unpaid. Zara worked extra shifts at the hospital, hardly sleeping, often skipping meals. Her body weakened, but her determination grew stronger. She reminded herself, love is not measured in words. Love is measured in sacrifice. And sacrifice is the gift money can never buy. The stranger's kindness. One evening, after another long shift, Zara sat outside the hospital, tears silently falling. She thought she had reached her end, when an elderly man approached her. He was a patient she had once cared for, a forgotten soul who had been abandoned by his family. He said softly, "Daughter, I heard about your son. Do you remember how you stayed by my bedside, when no one came for me? You gave me dignity when I had none, and love when the world turned its back. Today, let me give you something in return." He handed her an envelope. Inside was the exact amount she still needed for Bilal's treatment. Zara froze, overwhelmed. The man smiled. "Years ago, You gave me a gift money couldn't buy. Now it has returned to you. The miracle of recovery. Bilal's treatment began immediately. Days turned into weeks of struggle, prayers, and sleepless nights. Slowly, his strength returned. The first time he laughed again, Zara held him close and whispered through her tears, "This smile is the greatest gift of my life. No treasure on earth could buy it." Amna, watching everything, asked her mother one day, "Mama, what is the greatest gift in the world?" Zara hugged both her children and replied, "The gift that money can't buy. It is love. It is sacrifice. It is compassion. When you give from your heart, even if you have nothing in your hands, you become the richest person alive." The ripple of giving years passed. Bilal grew up to become a doctor, inspired by the kindness he had once received. He often treated patients for free, telling them, "My mother once gave up everything for me. How can I deny anyone care?" Amna became a social worker, dedicating her life to children in need. Whenever someone asked her why, she smiled and said, "Because my mother taught me the greatest gift in life is the one money can't buy." The eternal legacy. Zara grew old. Her hair silver, her body weak, but her heart remained strong. Even in her final years, she would sit outside her home with a jug of water on hot days, offering cups to thirsty strangers. When she finally passed away, her funeral overflowed with people. Neighbors, patients, colleagues, strangers. Everyone came. They didn't come because she was rich or famous. They came because she had touched their lives with something priceless: compassion. Her legacy lived not in wealth or possessions, but in the countless lives she had healed with kindness. And so, Zara's life whispered a timeless truth. Money can buy luxuries, but not love. Money can buy medicine, but not healing. Money can buy comfort, but not compassion. The greatest gift in life is the one money can never buy: the sacrifice of a loving heart. Key lessons for listeners. True wealth is not possessions, but love and sacrifice. The gift that money can't buy is compassion. A mother's love is measured in her sacrifices, not her comforts. When you give from the heart, blessings always return to you. In a busy corner of the city, where rickshaws rattled, children played barefoot in the streets, and the scent of spices filled the air, stood a tiny two-room house. Its walls were cracked, the roof leaked during rains, and the floor was patched with mismatched tiles. To strangers, it was hardly more than a shelter. But for Ayesha and her two children, Hina and Kamal, it was home, rich not in possessions but in love. Ayesha had lost her husband years ago in a sudden accident. Left alone with two small children, she could have broken under the weight of grief and responsibility. But she didn't. She rose each morning with determination, tying her scarf tightly, whispering a prayer, and beginning her day as a seamstress. Her sewing machine, though old and creaky, was her weapon of survival. Every stitch she made was a step toward keeping her children fed, clothed, and in school. Her hands bore calluses. Her eyes often blurred from long hours of work, but her heart never stopped giving. She always reminded herself, may not have much, but love, when given with all your heart, turns little into enough. in a home of warmth. Inside their small house, there was no luxury. Their meals were humble, simple lentils, dry bread, or rice with pickles. Clothes were patched and reused for years. Electricity bills were carefully counted, and sometimes candles replaced bulbs. Yet, despite all of this, their home was never poor in spirit. It was filled with stories, laughter, and the warmth of togetherness. One evening, Hina sighed as she looked out the window, and saw neighbors enjoying sweets. "Mama," she whispered, "why don't we ever have things like that?" Ayesha pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "Because, my dear, our feast is different. We feast on love, on care, on being together. Remember, it's not food or wealth that makes life full, it's love. Love turns little into enough." That night, they shared bread and tea, but they laughed so much that the sound drowned out the hunger. The cold winter one year, winter came with merciless winds. The city grew colder than usual, and prices of food and firewood rose sharply. Ayesha's income remained the same. Their thin blanket was barely enough for 3. At night, Hina and Kamal huddled close to their mother. Ayesha gave them the middle, taking the cold edges for herself. One night, she returned home with only a single loaf of bread. She broke it carefully into 3 pieces. Larger ones for her children, the smallest for herself. "Mama," Kamal protested. "You're not eating enough!" She smiled softly, hiding her hunger. "My stomach is filled when my children are fed. Love makes me full even when food is little." Though her stomach ached that night, her heart slept in peace. The test of illness, soon after. Kamal fell gravely ill. His small body burned with fever, his breath grew weak. Panic gripped Ayesha's heart. She rushed him to the hospital. The doctor examined him and prescribed medicine. "Your son will recover," he said. "But he needs this treatment." When Ayesha saw the price, her hands trembled. It was far more than she could afford. She returned home that night, sat in the dim glow of the kerosene lamp, and wept silently. But then she looked at Kamal's frail face, and strength returned to her. "No," she whispered fiercely. "Love does not surrender. Love turns even my little into enough. I will find a way." She stitched until her fingers bled, mended clothes for neighbors, worked extra hours in the shop. For days she ate nothing, saving every coin. Finally, she placed the money on the pharmacist's counter, and brought back the medicine. When Kamal's fever broke, Ayesha whispered to herself, "Yes. This is why love makes even the little I have enough." The stranger's coat, weeks later. While sewing late into the night at the shop, an elderly man walked in. His coat was old and torn, and his eyes carried the sadness of years. "Madam," he said softly, "can you repair this? I cannot pay much." Though exhausted, Ayesha nodded. She mended the coat carefully, charging almost nothing. When she returned it, the man's eyes welled up. "You remind me of my mother," he said. She too believed that love turned little into enough. The following week, he returned. Not with a torn coat, but with a basket of food and blankets. He explained that he was a retired teacher who had told his former students about Ayesha's kindness. Together, they decided to support her family. That night, as Ayesha unpacked the food, Hina asked, "Mama, why did he help us?" Ayesha smiled. "Because love never dies. What you give with love always comes back, multiplied." The children's journey years passed. Though life was still hard, Ayesha's sacrifices bore fruit. Hina excelled in her studies, winning scholarships. She dreamed of becoming a teacher, inspired by her mother's lessons. Kamal worked tirelessly, determined to be an engineer. He remembered the nights of hunger, the shared notebooks, and his mother's words echoing in his heart. Love turns little into enough. One day, when Kamal received his first paycheck, he placed it in Ayesha's tired hands. "Mama," he said, his voice breaking, "today our little has become more than enough. You gave everything for us. Now it is our turn." Ayesha's eyes filled with tears. She kissed his hand, whispering, "You are my wealth, my pride. No riches in the world could compare." The legacy of love. In her old age, Ayesha's body weakened, but her heart remained strong. She no longer sued for money, but she continued to mend torn clothes for neighbors without charge. When people asked why, she replied simply, "Because love is the only wealth I ever truly had. And the more I gave, the richer I became." When she finally passed away, her funeral overflowed with people. Neighbors, patients she had once helped, children she had clothed, strangers she had fed. They didn't come because she was wealthy. They came because she had given them something priceless: love. The children carry her torch. Hina became a teacher in a small school. She didn't just teach lessons from books. She taught lessons of life. When her students came hungry, she shared her own lunch. When they couldn't afford notebooks, she bought them. She often told them, "My mother once gave me everything when she had almost nothing." That love turned little into enough. Today, I give to you in her memory. Kamal, now an engineer, used part of his income to build affordable homes for the poor. At every house he helped complete, he whispered, "We once lived in a small house, but love made it enough. May this home bring the same love to you." Together, Hina and Kamal carried forward their mother's legacy. And every time they faced a challenge, her words echoed in their hearts. Love turns little into enough. The key lessons for listeners. Poverty cannot defeat a heart rich with love. Sacrifice and compassion multiply blessings. What is given in love always returns, often greater than before. True wealth is not measured in possessions, but in the love we give.